Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kiorkof, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be reviewing episode 2 of Hard Knocks Los Angeles, training camp with the Los Angeles Rams and Chargers. So on today's episode, we're going to be going over in chronological order everything that took place on tonight's episode of Hard Knocks, giving you guys my initial reactions to everything. Then after that, we're going to be talking about what actually took place earlier today, full padded practice between the Rams and the Chargers. Both of them had their own individual practices earlier today. A lot of reports coming out from different training camps talking about what exactly happened, the competitions during camp, a couple injuries here and there, a couple holdouts that we'll talk about, rookies stepping up, the established starters at the beginning of camp. We'll review all of that at the end of the episode. So without further ado, let me remind you guys, for those of you who are just new to the channel, I'm typically a guy that talks about fantasy football, but I am born and raised Los Angeles guy. So I'm always rooting for the Rams and Chargers. So that's why we're here talking about Hard Knocks episode 2. So for those of you looking for more fantasy football stuff or Rams or Chargers related stuff, make sure you subscribe to the channel down below. Okay, so let's talk about how this episode started. In comparison to last week, we saw a little bit more energy in terms of the beginning episode. Right out the gate, we start with Sean McVay firing us up, talking to the offense, talking about, how they have to produce this upcoming season. And that already starts the tempo off on a different switch in comparison to last week, which is a great way to start. After that, they pretty much start talking about how training camp this upcoming season, despite being the same as normal, you're going to continue to go through your reps. You're going to continue to learn, whether it's film room, whether it's taking care of your body outside of practice. Everything is pretty much the same. But the only big difference maker as of right now is the fact that veterans get to stay at home. That's something that has been very, they're leaning on this upcoming season because of the fact that everything has taken place with COVID. The fact that veterans can stay at home, be with their families, that is an important thing. And then the fact that rookies, on the other hand, will not be given that opportunity. They will still be at the official campus or in the hotel. Which, a funny story, I don't know if you guys heard, but last week, one of the rookies for the Seattle Seahawks tried to bring in a friend of theirs into his hotel, and obviously he got cut because, listen, if it's you above the team, then obviously your mind is not in the right place. And I'm glad that players are starting to at least understand the importance of keeping themselves safe and not bringing any extra harm to their teams and their potential goal of winning a championship by the end of the season. But either way, we ended up kind of seeing a little bit of their home life, seeing what the rookies had to deal with. But after that, again, this upcoming season, this entire training camp is far different than anything we've seen before. I mean, the fact that we'll not have a single preseason game is unbelievable. We would have already played preseason games by now and been in the full swing and at least seen some competitions either developed or won by specific players at this point in the preseason. But unfortunately, that's not the case. And there's going to be a lot of players that unfortunately won't make rosters this upcoming season because they're not given the ample opportunity. Again, starters are going to reign supreme during camp unless they're veterans and they're going to sit out for X amount of snaps here and there just to make sure that they're healthy. But other guys that are undrafted free agent rookies or guys that are in their second or third year and really haven't made a name for themselves, it's going to be really difficult for them to at least make that name for themselves. I mean, they initially showed Austin Ekeler, which Austin Ekeler, if you guys don't know, is one of my favorite players in the National Football League, not because he's an undrafted free agent rookie that's not only proven himself for the Los Angeles Chargers, but the way he plays, the fact that he can be one of the smaller backs in the National Football League, but it doesn't matter. He's still going to produce on a downly basis. And his journey a couple years back where on the very last game of the preseason, he ended up producing against the San Francisco 49ers, and they pretty much covered that. And that's a great story. Another one of these undrafted free agent rookies. I mean, we talk about guys like Philip Lindsay, who did the exact same thing. The Colorado kid did the exact same thing for the Denver Broncos a couple years back. Austin Ekeler, those kind of guys aren't going to be able to make rosters this year if they're not given the opportunity. And then they started, involving us and talking about their other running backs. Sure, they still have guys like Justin Jackson. They still drafted Joshua Kelly out of UCLA. But then they started talking about Darius Bradwell, who is a little bit overweight, to say the least, as a running back. Coming into camp at 250 pounds, they're talking about that he needs to drop weight regardless, trying to get to that 235 number. They're working him out. They're getting him ready. Again, for those of you who don't know, Coach Anthony Lynn, the head coach for the Los Angeles Chargers, was a running back. He was the running backs coach in Buffalo prior to being signed as the head coach of the Los Angeles Rams. This guy's all about running backs, and that's why I believe he has confidence in Austin Ekeler, and we'll talk about Austin Ekeler a little bit later, but that guy's going to be the starting running back of this team, and I'm super excited about it, especially from a fantasy perspective. But either way, moving on. A couple other guys, we go from Darius Bradwell, a guy that might not make the roster. I mean, he's the fourth running back, might be the odd man out this upcoming season. Could be a practice squad guy, but we'll have to wait and see, just depending on how he ends up producing in camp. But on the other side, with the Los Angeles Rams, we have guys that are seventh round draft picks. They pretty much kind of gave a little section dedicated to Clay Johnston, the linebacker, and what he has to deal with. Again, as a linebacker, you're going to probably be on scout team majority of the time, especially as a seventh round pick. How can you separate yourself from the competition? How can you win a job as a scout team guy? How can you do everything right and be, at the top of your game while also not pissing a couple people off here and there and winning a competition? That's pretty much as hard as it gets, especially when you don't have full pads, when you're in, just shirts and shorts. That is always going to be something that is going to be tough for these young players. But I guess this offseason, it's a little different. So everyone's going to have to eventually adjust and stick with the program regardless. Then they go ahead and move on. We talk about some, undrafted free agent rookies that are drafted in the second round. Then we talk about some big names. We go over to Jalen Ramsey buying a new house in Los Angeles. The house that they were looking at, that's just not for me. I mean, he's probably going to spend a lot of money on that thing. And in terms of the houses that I've seen here in Los Angeles, I mean, sure, it's like secluded and it's, off and about, but you got to make sure you got to pull before you even buy that house, especially if you're going to spend upwards of, $5-6 million on something like that, maybe even more. 10 million is probably more in line with the amount of acres that he had. But regardless, enough with the spending of houses. That kind of stuff is cool. But like in terms of Hard Knocks, it really doesn't interest me in terms of what I'm looking for and what I get out of Hard Knocks. Regardless, moving on back to the training camp field, we talk about Jared Goff and Sean McVay, two guys that they had a little bit of a segment, that little bit of a Monday Night Football feel, bum 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 dum dum. And anyway, it was just pretty much just constant communication, a little bit of a montage of them. Keeping up the tempo of practice, keeping it excited, keeping it live almost, even though the fact that sure, they're not full hitting and it's not, full routes being ran and everything like that. It's all about tempo and it's all about practicing full speed so that when you get to the full speed level, you're already ready and your rhythm is on. And we love to see that with the Los Angeles Rams, especially how many plays they run per game offensively. Outside of that, we go back to more of a solemn note. They started presenting the narrative of, okay, there's a wide receiver coach for the Los Angeles Chargers. His name is Seth Ryan, kind of familiar to the Hard Knocks family as he is Rex Ryan's son. And Rex Ryan, again, with the Jets, was on Hard Knocks many years back with the Jets. Many years back. And Seth Ryan is right now the wide receiver coach for the Los Angeles Chargers. Obviously, they kind of reviewed it in the Hard Knocks episode that he was falsely tested positive for COVID. They pretty much did everything that they could, and they kind of showed their process of how they would deal with a coach or a player getting this sickness and whether or not they're in line to protect everyone. And their protocol is pretty good in my opinion. I really do think that the NFL season is going to go off without a hitch because of how preventative and how effective they are at controlling and mitigating anything that happens in terms of spread overall. I mean, the amount of different measures they went through with the wristbands and all of that kind of stuff, and then Mike Williams forgetting his wristband. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of stories of players forgetting to get those wristbands, being fined for those, and just making sure that you're always socially distancing, even at practice, despite the fact that these guys are banging real soon and making full contact. Either way, a couple more things before we continue and talk about what happened earlier today during the full practice. We had a couple more montages of guys like Justin Herbert, his ability to either command an offense and not be a quiet rookie. Again, sure, he's coming in and he's playing behind Tyrod Taylor to begin with, but the fact of the matter is they drafted him in the first round very early for a reason. I mean, coming out of Oregon, this is a very talented quarterback, but again, only played in the shotgun at Oregon. And then on top of it, didn't have a cadence. I mean, everything was just based off clapping and noise and stuff like that, and a timing-based offensive snap count. And how is he going to be able to transition find his confidence, find his voice, and be able to talk to guys like Keenan Allen, who are veterans in this league, the top players at the position, and be able to command respect from those guys. I think it's going to take a little while, but hopefully Justin Herbert can find his footing there and lead those guys. Outside of that, we move back to the Los Angeles Rams. We talk about Aaron Donald and Andrew Whitworth. I mean, two of the veterans on this team. Obviously, Aaron Donald on the thumbnail for a reason. I mean, Aaron Donald is a stud, one of the best, if not the best defensive player in the National Football League at this time, if not the best player in the National Football League for the amount of talent he has. He's coaching up his teammates. So is Andrew Whitworth. These two guys are veterans. They're at the top of their position at this moment in time, and it's only right that they coach up their teammates, because again, when you're at the top of the position, you don't really have to worry about someone vying for your spot and coming after you. When you're at that kind of ability and you have that much experience, and you're willing to share your knowledge, it's just a win-win situation for your team, because you're not only making the players around you better, you're making your team better because you're willing to share that knowledge. Now, I know a lot of players are going to be in competitions and not going to be able to divulge information. I know I've heard of stories that Jason Witten is a guy that is no nonsense, will not teach the rookies or the younger guys below him regardless. When they brought in Martellus Bennett to the Dallas Cowboys many years ago, and it was even on Hard Knocks, Jason Witten didn't give them the light of day. So I'm glad to see that these veterans are coaching up and helping out their teammates. I mean, it's just a great thing to see overall. Outside of that, we kind of get to the point where they're getting the cleats on, they're getting helmets on. We haven't gotten full shells, we haven't gotten shoulder pads as of yet, but a little bit of protocol here and there. The additions of potential face shields, I don't know if players are going to be able to use those. Again, it's going to be hard to breathe. I mean, what's the point if you're going to have the little slits in it anyway? At this point, sure, it's a preventative measure, but I doubt a lot of players are going to wear that this upcoming season, as it might just be a distraction overall. And it could easily pop out if, in fact, it's not fastened tightly. I mean, again, they've been testing it all offseason, trying to get something that players can actively wear in terms of getting them more comfortable in terms of playing. But overall, it's just going to be a matter of trusting yourself, trusting other teams, other organizations, and making sure that you're not in the wrong place at the wrong timing and unfortunately get sick. Outside of that, training camp starts to warm up a little bit. We get to the point where we're seeing a little bit more contact. We're seeing offensive linemen start to bang a little bit, even without shoulder pads. But let's talk about what we saw earlier today. I pretty much kind of reviewed and read a couple articles, watched a little bit of film in terms of what we saw at Rams and Chargers camp. Starting off with the Rams, full padded practice earlier today. A couple of the standouts as of this past weekend and today. Van Jefferson, the second round wide receiver pick, he's currently in the competition with Josh Reynolds. I mean, they have to determine who is going to be the third wide receiver in this offense. And I think that's going to come down to the wire this offseason. As of this moment in time, they would probably give Josh Reynolds the position, as he has the most experience going to his fourth season. But we have to remember, the Los Angeles Rams love to use 3 wide receiver sets. In fact, they ran and passed the ball out of 3 wide receiver sets 80% of the time last season. So whoever's going to be that third wide receiver, whoever's going to fill in for the Brandon Cook spot, I mean, there's so much opportunity available, and you have to be ready to act upon that opportunity, because your number is going to be called on a consistent basis. So whether it's Van Jefferson, who's turning heads in training camp, or whether it ends up being a guy like Josh Reynolds, who has a little bit more experience on him, there's a reason why they brought Van Jefferson in, and I think he might be on the inside track to potentially win that job this offseason after a couple practices here and there. In terms of what we saw earlier today, in terms of the running back situation, full pads, everyone's banging, but it was more of a committee approach once again. I mean, whether it's Malcolm Brown or Darrell Henderson, and then the rookie out of Florida State, we have Cam Akers. Unfortunately, we're continuing to see a committee situation. As a fantasy football guy myself, I'm not really excited to see that, but overall, it's going to be a process. Somebody's going to eventually win that job, whether it's this offseason with the opportunity they're given or during the regular season. I know eventually they're going to want to give one of these guys the job. Hopefully that's sooner rather than later. But again, this offense has always had a valuable running back. Todd Gurley's produced over the last couple of years at a very high level. If they are going to supplement that with 3 running backs because they don't believe it belongs to just one person and they don't want to really run one guy into the ground, I could understand that approach. But hopefully it's going to be a combination of at least Cam Akers, Darrell Henderson, because they are both, in my opinion, the most talented backs in this backfield. Let's get Malcolm Brown out of there as soon as possible. That's just my idea or thought process. Moving on, a couple other players that are for sure starters. we lost a pretty good middle linebacker. I mean, one of the best coverage linebackers this offseason, Corey Littleton, went to the Las Vegas Raiders. That's an unfortunate fact of the matter. I mean, we couldn't pay him, and they offered him a lot of money. Either way, restructuring the linebacking core is going to be a very, vital process for this offseason. Our front four is always going to be solid. I mean, we signed players. We have Aaron Donald. You still have Brockers. There are great defensive linemen for this team. The secondary is going to get locked down. You still have Taylor Rapp back there. You still have, Jalen Ramsey, who's going to lead that group, Josh Johnson. The question is, where do the linebackers stand? And as of this moment in time, the starting linebackers are Samson Ebukam, Leonard Floyd, who we signed from the Bears, and then we still have Micah Kaiser, who dealt with injury last year, but he's back, and he's going to be one of the starting inside linebackers. And hopefully these three guys can give us the needed coverage and or run stopping ability that we've kind of lacked in the last couple of years. Sure, Corey Littleton was great in the coverage game, but in terms of stopping the run, we really did not have linebackers that were stepping into holes and banging and filling holes and making tackles on a consistent basis. Hopefully we can find that this year within this linebacking core. Outside of that, I mentioned Taylor Rapp a little bit earlier. He sat out today's practice with a little bit of a knee injury. According to Sean McVay, it's a little knee injury. I don't know. I mean, a knee injury is a knee injury regardless of how little or big it is. It could re-aggravate over time, so they're just trying to take care of him before the season even gets kicked off. Outside of that, the last thing we pretty much went over, a couple of things that I read and saw in terms of their 11-on-11 practice. Tyler Higbee catching multiple passes. That's not a surprise. This offseason, Jared Goff has said multiple times that he could potentially see this offense having 3 1,000-yard receivers with Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, and Tyler Higbee being that third guy. Again, we still can't forget the fact that Tyler Higbee has another tight end that's going to be vying for snaps. Gerald Everett is not a bad tight end. Prior to Gerald Everett getting hurt last season, he was a top 10 graded tight end according to Pro Football Focus. This is a very talented tight end. Again, a lot of rumors of this 12 personnel looking like the early 2010s New England Patriots with the Aaron Hernandez and Rob Gronkowski duo. We could potentially see that in Los Angeles. We're just going to have to wait and see. Obviously, last season's snap counts didn't really present that narrative, but we could end up seeing that change this upcoming season. Outside of that, moving on to the Los Angeles full padded practice, what we saw today in the last couple of days, Melvin Ingram, the defensive end, is holding out at this moment in time. He obviously wants a new contract. He wants something guaranteed. His current guarantee this season is pretty much nothing. And if he gets hurt and he doesn't get a contract next year, that's obviously going to be a problem. So what he's trying to do is he's trying to ensure that he gets money, but he wants to still be active. He still wants to be a participating teammate. He's shown up to practice. He's not practicing, but he's there. He's going to be present. And if that doesn't show the organization that he wants to be there and he wants to help this team win and he wants to at least ensure his safety, his financial safety, then I don't know what does. Obviously, they paid Joey Bosa a lot of money. I'm not sure if they're willing to keep a guy like Melvin Ingram, but he's been just as vital to this Los Angeles Chargers defense in terms of pass rush and just blowing up plays as Joey Bosa over the last couple of years. This is a dynamic duo that we need to keep intact, and hopefully Melvin Ingram is signed soon so he can get going and practicing. Outside of that, Austin Eckler, in terms of snap counts, in terms of playing within the first team offense, he is far and away the first team running back, and I've been saying it all season long. Ever since he signed that contract for 4 years, $24 million, and they let Melvin Gordon go, Austin Eckler is going to be this season's Christian McCaffrey. And what does that mean exactly? The jump that Christian McCaffrey took from 2017 to 2018 in terms of snap counts, in terms of usage, in terms of touches, that is the jump that I expect Austin Eckler to make this upcoming season. I'm so excited to see it, and I'm so excited for it to potentially come true and be able to tell everybody I told him so. Regardless, outside of that, the QB competition, obviously we still have Tyrod Taylor as the number one quarterback. But again, this is just a matter of time. I think it's a ticking time bomb. I think that this offense eventually is going to turn to the talents of Justin Herbert as time progresses, whether it's a couple weeks into the season or a couple months. At the end of the day, they drafted Justin Herbert to play. You want to build a team around the rookie contract at the quarterback position, fill out everything else surrounding him, and then take that team to the Super Bowl. I think it's a couple years, and then maybe we get the Chargers in the big dance. You never know. Outside of that, again, Tyrod Taylor, he has the ability to be mobile. He has mobility. But the thing is, so does a guy like Justin Herbert. He's still a young quarterback. I don't know if you guys seen his highlights from Oregon. He can move. he has the ability to, make some plays on the run and even use his legs to be able to earn yardage. That in itself is an exciting prospect. But either way, week 1 against the Cincinnati Bengals, whoever ends up being the starting quarterback by that time, still going to be, I think, a pretty easy contest for them going into that game. Regardless, that's pretty much my entire impression, everything that I've learned from today's full padded practice, and everything that we needed to review on this episode's Hard Knocks. Thank you everybody for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, make sure you click the like button down below. I really do appreciate your guys' participation. Let me know down in the comment section, what do you guys think about this week's episode and the following episode, and what are you looking for in terms of Hard Knocks, or potentially are you a fan of one of these teams? Let me know. Thank you everybody for watching, and until next time, I'll see you guys. Peace.